Hello everybody, my name is Professor Barth, history professor at Arizona State University. Besides teaching courses on U.S. history and the British Empire, I also teach a course every fall semester, History 302, every fall semester, including the next fall semester, on the history of money. History of money. We begin with the ancient world and proceed all the way through to the modern world, including the very modern world. In fact, the subtitle of the course is From Babylon to Bitcoin. From Babylon to Bitcoin. And appropriately enough, a couple months ago, your professor contacted me about making a video on Bitcoin, just briefly describing some of the how it functions and some of the implications about it. And so here I am, and it is quite an honor to be here. I'll begin first with a basic overview of what Bitcoin is, and then we'll look at some of the big picture questions. All right, so what is Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is the largest and most famous of cryptocurrencies. It's the original, in fact, created by an anonymous person or group sometime around 2008, and that founder or founders remains completely mysterious to us. We don't know who it was, but it's quite astounding how successful Bitcoin has been. The current market capitalization of Bitcoin is about $180 billion, right? $180 billion. And there are about 300,000 transactions per day in Bitcoin. So by any barometer, that's a pretty successful currency, you could say. And the price of a single Bitcoin, as of this video, stands at about $11,000. Now, in this world of cryptocurrencies, I'll define that in a moment, there are other ones too. There's Litecoin, there's Ethereum, there's Ripple, there's several others. And together, all of them, including Bitcoin, constitute about $460 billion worth of cryptocurrencies or digital currencies. So this is quite a big deal if you're looking at international relations and economies. Now, what do we mean by cryptocurrencies, right? That term gets thrown around a lot. What's a good, solid explanation for them? Well, in short, cryptocurrencies are privately issued digital monies that use cryptography to secure transactions and control the creation of new monetary units. Encryption is necessary because it blocks unwanted third-party intervention in the exchange. The coins are not physical. They are virtual. The owner holds them in a digital wallet secured by encryption technology so that only the owner of that wallet can access them. To make a payment, the owner of the wallet sends the virtual coins directly into the digital wallet of the recipient. The transaction is validated through blockchain technology, which verifies the legitimacy of that virtual coin and then adds that transaction to the complete ledger, the blockchain ledger or record of all payment transactions. This record, however, in the blockchain of payments, this record of payments does not include any personal information, and this is very key, does not include any personal information about the trader, including the sender of the Bitcoin or the recipient of the Bitcoin, so that senders and recipients of Bitcoins are completely anonymous in the same way that the spending of cash is anonymous, right? As opposed to using a credit card or something like that. Bitcoin functions without any central administrator. sometimes people ask me, who runs Bitcoin? And while I understand the question, right, the answer is nobody. Nobody runs Bitcoin. It would sort of be like asking the question, who runs gold? Or who runs silver, right? Nobody runs it. It's a commodity, in this case, a digital commodity. The only thing that runs Bitcoin, if you want to use that terminology, the only thing that runs Bitcoin is the algorithm, right? This is the algorithm that controls the attributes of Bitcoin, including, most importantly, the growth and supply of Bitcoins over time, right? But the algorithm itself is completely irrevocable and completely unchangeable by any person or group, right? It's fixed, 100% impossible to change. So nobody runs Bitcoin. That is Bitcoin, right? Interesting technology. What is the attraction of Bitcoin? Well, it possesses, if you look at it closely, all of the properties that make for a good commodity currency, right? That includes things like divisibility, durability, portability, right? But probably, besides that, the most attractive feature of Bitcoin is privacy. And I'll speak to, more to that in a moment, so hang on to that. But privacy, very, very important. For proponents of Bitcoin, another major attraction is that it can't be controlled by the government or by the banking system. Bitcoin is a rules-based money. The rule being the algorithm that I spoke of a few moments ago. It's a rules-based money not subject to the discretionary whims of a government or a central bank. And if you look at governments and central banks historically, whenever they control currency, it very often leads to things like debasement, devaluation, inflation, and things like that. And so Bitcoin is not subject to that. What are the weaknesses of Bitcoin? And there are weaknesses, no doubt about it. Well, first off, the most obvious one, the price of Bitcoin so far has been very volatile. In fact, it's been volatile all through its history. And there's no indication that this will change anytime soon. That's a problem when you consider the fact that price stability is one of the most important aspects of a money, right? Price stability, meaning, can you trust that this money will retain its value over time? Besides this problem, for some critics, the fact that Bitcoin is not alterable, the fact that the growth rate and the supply of Bitcoins cannot be changed by authorities like a central bank, is a major flaw. Keynesian economists, in particular, have a very keen interest in adjusting the rate of monetary growth over time in order to address concerns like full employment and price stability, and Bitcoin does not allow for that. There are many other economic criticisms of Bitcoin, including from many non-Keynesian economists. If I had more time in this video, I would delve into those. I'm somewhat tempted to, but I don't have enough time to do that. So I'll focus the last part of this video on crime, terrorism, and international relations, because I think that's a little more pertinent to your course. But if privacy is one of the greatest advantages and benefits of Bitcoin, and no doubt about it, it is. Privacy is going to become the new currency in the 21st century. As privacy becomes more scarce, the demand for privacy is going to increase. Nonetheless, the privacy of Bitcoin is also a weakness. And it's a weakness that some critics have latched onto as a reason to regulate Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin transactions are completely anonymous, those who engage in black markets on the so-called dark web, right, I'm talking illegal drugs, child pornography, murder for hire, illegal weapon sales. Those who engage in underground black market economic activity, for those people, Bitcoin is the best means of payment. If you're doing it online, Bitcoin is the best. Now, if you're doing it on ground, so to speak, cash is king. But Bitcoin, if you're doing it online, is best. You're not going to use a credit card, right? If you're doing something illegal online, you're going to want something anonymous. And so for illicit activity, you want to use cash. And Bitcoin is, you could call Bitcoin the cash of the internet. And in line with that, Bitcoin may also be an ideal means of payment for terrorist groups and for the supporters of terrorist groups. Islamic militants have, on record, funded some terrorist activities with Bitcoin. In places like Indonesia, for instance, in the Gaza Strip, terrorist groups have asked supporters to donate Bitcoin for the purchase of weapons. You're not going to use your credit card for that, obviously, right? But in the case of Bitcoin, it's not so easy for the feds or for other authorities to trace it. So international weapon sales also come into play. On the subject of international relations, the jury, in my view, is still out on how Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies more generally will affect the balance of power between various countries. China, for instance, has had a love-hate relationship with Bitcoin for quite a while. From about 2014 to 2015, about 60 or 70% of Bitcoin trades occurred in China. And in 2016, over 90% of Bitcoin trades occurred in China. Bitcoin mining, which, without getting into too much of the weeds, Bitcoin mining is how Bitcoins are created through computing power. Bitcoin mining was long dominated by the Chinese because energy in China is extremely cheap compared to other parts of the world. But China in recent months has cracked down on Bitcoin through regulation. And Bitcoin mining, which again relies on heavy computing power, has shifted to Russia, Japan, the United States, the EU. And there's been much fear in China of a forthcoming ban on Bitcoin mining. Whether or not that happens is another question. Why does China fear Bitcoin? Well, Bitcoin is no doubt a threat to national governments, and especially to more authoritarian national governments. Bitcoin is a stateless currency, and if it does, and that's still an open question, if it does become a viable substitute for national currencies, it is unlikely that governments like China, or the United States for that matter, will have much incentive to tolerate such overt competition. Governments traditionally like to control the value of currency. They like to control the movement of currencies across borders. They call those capital controls. And Bitcoin evades all of that. So that's one issue at play here. Also, Bitcoin has the potential to massively disrupt the banking industry. Very, very important. Disrupting the banking industry. So Bitcoin is not only a stateless currency, Bitcoin is also a bankless currency. The banks do not control Bitcoin and cannot control Bitcoin, right? Compare that, for example, to the Federal Reserve System here in this country, which has been, everybody acknowledges, it's been completely captured by the American banking system, for better or for worse, right? Proponents say it's for the better, right? But one way or the other, right, it's controlled by the American banking system. Bitcoin is not. But it's not just the Federal Reserve System, it's the ECB in Europe, the People's Bank of China, same story there. So, in conclusion, yes, Bitcoin is a threat to national governments and to the banking industry. It's unclear what sort of impact Bitcoin will have on international relations, although I will say it would be very smart for aspiring world powers to encourage Bitcoin mining. This is a mistake on China's end to surrender Bitcoin mining to competing powers, if that's indeed what they're doing. But it does seem that China just cannot get over the threat that it poses to authoritarian governments. So they're going to crack down on Bitcoin mining. Well, that is their issue. Only time will tell how Bitcoin impacts the balance of power internationally. For now, it's far too early to say one way or another. A lot hinges on what China does. There's a lot of talk about Russia nowadays, and Russia admittedly is getting into Bitcoin, but China undoubtedly is the number one challenger to U.S. hegemony worldwide, far and away, no contest. I mean, Russia isn't even close, right, to China in that regard. And so, on this question of Bitcoin and international relations, a lot hinges on what the Chinese decide to do in the long run. For international commerce, I think Bitcoin, if adapted worldwide, and that is a major if. There are a lot of economic problems that I didn't get into in this video, but if it were adapted worldwide, actually Bitcoin will prove remarkably positive. It's fast, it's secure, it's low cost. On the question of crime and terrorism, this is a problem with any form of payment that is private, right? Any form of payment that is private or anonymous. Cash is the same way, right? Crime networks use cash because it's anonymous. So do we abolish cash, right? Obviously not. We don't abolish cash. In my view, the benefits that accrue from a private or anonymous currency make the costs worth it. Do we want corporations, banks, and governments to track everything we buy or sell? The obvious answer to that is no. Okay, not because you and I are engaged in crime, right? But because we value our privacy, and there may be cases in the future where corporations and government are not well intended, right? In which case, anonymous payments might be a very necessary option to maintain some sort of free society. So, again, the jury is out on Bitcoin. It's incredibly fascinating. It's revolutionary, I would argue, but we still don't know. So, although I wasn't able to answer all of the questions you may have had necessarily in any concrete way, I do hope that this brief talk today illuminated what those questions are precisely. If you're more interested in history and money, sign up for my course, History 302, coming up this fall semester. That is all. Professor Barth checking out. God bless everyone.